Okay, so again, my name is David Dodge. I'm the executive editor of Gays with Kids. So we are the leading online resource for gay, bi, and trans men who are interested in fatherhood and who are already fathers. We've been around for about 6 years, and we have been slowly growing this community over the course of the time that we've been around. You may know us best from our very popular Instagram feed, which features very inspiring, beautiful photos of gay dads and their kids. You may know us from our website, which we have been building up over the last 6 years and actually just recently relaunched with a bunch of new resources. And that's partly because over the time that we've been around, something that we've been getting a lot of feedback on from our followers is that people want more comprehensive resources that can kind of help gay, bi, and trans men walk through the process of becoming a dad from start to finish. It's not an easy process, as everyone knows. You wouldn't be on this webinar if it was. So it's something that we're very excited that we have been taking the time over the last year to partner with experts in all of the different fields that are available to queer men as they look to build their family in adoption and surrogacy and foster care. And we've been working to develop these resources that we can start to bring to you to really walk you through the process, start to finish. We want to be able to be the one-stop shop for all your needs when you're trying to navigate what is a very, very complicated process. So with that, I'll just go over a little bit of the ground rules here. This webinar will last about an hour. We want to leave as much time for your questions as possible, but for the first 30 minutes, we're going to take you through a presentation with our adoption experts here who are based all over the country. We'll give you a very kind of high level overview of what the adoption process is like nationally. And then we will get over to the Q&A part of the presentation as quickly as possible. So throughout the presentation, if you have questions that might be inspired by something one of our presenters are saying, please feel free to use the Q&A function, which will be at the very bottom of your screen at any point, and we'll start amassing the questions. And once we get to the Q&A section, I'll just start going through those one by one, and we'll get through as many as we can. If there's a question that we can't answer for whatever reason, we will get back to you. We will follow up via email, we'll make sure to get through as many of these as possible. Okay, so with that, I'm going to introduce these esteemed panel of experts that we have gathered for you today. So first we have Molly Rampe Thomas, who's the founder of Choice Network, which is based in Ohio but works nationally. Then we have Trey Rabin, who's the Associate Director of, this is a new title for you, right? It's a little bit longer. Associate Director of Kinship and Community Services. There we go. Okay, sorry. I think I had the wrong title on my previous slide. And he's based in Seattle, Amara. Then we have Olivia Pope, who's the Community Outreach and Development Manager at Friends in Adoption, which is based in New York and also works nationally. So what we're going to be going over today are kind of these main bullets you see here to the left. We're going to be talking about, actually, you know what? Let's see. We're going to be going over just what the general process is step by step in the adoption process, what the home study process entails, and basically just give you a good start to finish overview of everything that is involved. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to our first presenter. Molly, you can take it from here.
Actually, I think it's Trey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trey.
Make sure I was like, oh wait, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Like I said, Trey Rabin from Amara, located in Seattle, and kind of we serve the Western Washington part of Washington State, up here in the Pacific Northwest. A little bit more about me. I've been at Amara for a long time, 9 years, and I've had various roles. I've been one of our direct service social workers directly working with our foster and adoptive families and the youth in the home. I've done outreach to recruit foster families. I've been a supervisor, and then now I'm kind of in charge of kind of some grants and some other community stuff like this awesome work that we do with Gays with Kids. Personally, me and my husband were foster parents for just over 4 years, had 2 foster placements during that time, a little baby that we had for about 3 months, and we were the last stop to get that little guy back home to his parents. And then we had another little guy, came when he was 15 months, left for a bit, came back when he was 20 months, and ended up never leaving. And we adopted him last summer, and he is now 5 and in his second week of online kindergarten. Fun times. All right, but I'm going to talk about kind of the main path of adoption kind of here in the United States for potential gay men interested in parenting. So the first is what we call domestic infant adoption. You may also hear it referred to as private adoption, but this is typically where you are matched with the birth family, and then at birth you adopt that infant. There's kind of two ways you can go about that. One is through an agency. So typically agency are more of a kind of one-stop shop for this process. So they'll help you get the home study done. They will help, match with the birth parents, the birth families. They'll help get attorneys and kind of help you do all the process of the adoption from kind of start to finish. There's also what's called independent adoption. It's where you typically work directly with the lawyer, and then maybe you kind of contract out to get your home study done by a social worker. And so it's a little bit more parsed out, but the end goal is still the same of adopting an infant. One cool story is my agency, we're very foster adoption focused, but we used to have a domestic infant adoption program. And while it's typically infants, we actually had one case where we did a 2-year-old where the birth parents had family circumstances change and they realized they couldn't parent that kid long term. And so that was a really cool way to see that, because typically we think of infants, but it can be toddlers as well sometimes. The other route is foster care adoption. So we know we have a foster care system in our country, and their kids are removed because of abuse and neglect in their birth parents' home. They go into foster care. First goal is to kind of reunify that children back to their family or potentially with a relative. But we know for some families, due to the safety concerns, that the state is unable to return those kids back home, and they will go through a legal process to make that child legally free for adoption. And so you can adopt certain kids from the foster care system who weren't able to go back home. And then international adoption. This is adopting kids outside of the United States. This isn't my expertise, but this is another option. For some gay men, there are some limits. Some countries don't allow gay men or same-sex couples to do it. So there's some loopholes maybe if you're a single person, but that's also another pathway as well.
Thank you so much, Trey. I'll just add, so the 3 experts that we have here today do not focus on international adoption, but we do have one of our industry partners, Spence Chapin, which is also based in New York, who does. So if anyone has specific questions about international adoption, the 4 of us can definitely handle most of those questions, but if we're unable to, we'll definitely follow up with some answers from Spence Chapin. Okay, next we have, now I think it's you, Molly, right?
Yes. Hi, guys. So my name is Molly Rampe Thomas, and I am the founder of Choice Network. I think, if you were to Google liberal adoption agencies, most liberal you can find in the United States, I pray mine is the one that comes up. So I started doing this work 10 years ago after I met my daughter's birth mother. So I'm also an adoptive mom and a very open adoption with her. My slides, I'm going to be talking about finding LGBTQ affirming adoption professionals. This is something that I actually love our partnership with Gays with Kids up for. But HRC is actually an agency that we all partner with as well. HRC has an all children, all families database. And when I talk with families from other states who need home studies, I always send them to HRC's site. HRC agencies that have their seal of approval conduct an internal self-assessment, provide professional development to staff, and implement HRC's benchmark of LGBTQ inclusion. I always tell families to start with the innovative inclusion, which is the top level, because those are the agencies doing the most. Next then, the thing that we always tell families to do is to make sure that you're checking the promotional materials for LGBTQ inclusion. And again, this means language and imagery. We tell families we want you to see them screaming it from the mountaintop, that all are welcome here. One thing my agency did is after we got trained by HRC, they told us that we should stop using the term birth mother and that we should take that away throughout our site. And when we first started doing it, we were like, I can't understand how that would work. Like, we just couldn't grasp it. And they're like, just do it. Be the first agency that does it. And so we did. And And now we use pregnant person in all of our materials and on our site and on our social media. And it's one of the proudest things that we've ever done. So again, you want to check their website, you want to check their social media, want to check all their materials and just make sure that they are loud and proud in their support. And then also ask for recommendation from friends and family, especially your gay and friends and family. And Gays with Kids is a great place to go. The Facebook group is a great place to go as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Molly. And I'll just talk up the three experts and their organizations a little bit more, since it's my right to do so. But so we are partnering with the three experts that you see here today for a very specific reason. They all have been working with the LGBT community for decades. They are very much, they're well versed in this. They have a long track record of working with the LGBT community. And you'll find as you start to enter this world a little bit more, that that's not true of a lot of the players in this world. You may have heard of the so-called religious freedom bills that are starting to be introduced in state legislatures all across the country and have been passed in 11, unfortunately, that make it legal to discriminate against prospective foster and adoptive parents who identify as LGBTQ. So this slide really is a very important first step, is to make sure that the professionals you're working with aren't only LGBT friendly, but affirming, and really are going to work with you to make sure that you get the best experience possible. And again, a thank you to the three experts here for being very much a part of that. Okay, so we will move on to the home study presented by Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia with Friends in Adoption, and just real quick, I've been with the agency for almost 2 years now. I'm in community outreach, so I deal a lot with the professional side.
Right.
And so I,
Sorry.
oops, sorry, slides are going crazy. But you know, just like the other experts, you know, in this meeting, we're affirming and inclusive, and just a really great fit for Gays with Kids. So hopefully, you know, you see that with all of us. So I'm just going to go over a home studies really quickly. It's a super kind of complicated topic. So in a nutshell, you know, I think the word home study is a little deceptive because it just sounds like it's a study of your home, but really it's a conversation between you, if you have a partner, or you're married, or whoever you're living with, and a social worker, to kind of assess not only your house, but also your life, your plans for adoption, your background, and, you know, basically go over all of that all together. So it's usually a couple of meetings, 1 to 2. And I kind of pulled up a document from one of our social workers just to give you examples of sort of like the questions they ask. But, you know, it really is, it sounds sort of like an inquisition, but we really encourage people not to think of it like that, because it is you making a bond with your social worker, and so that your social worker can sort of help you and build tools to best, you know, work through this journey of adoption. So you are looking at things like you'll have sort of an individual interview with just you and the social worker, and then if you are living with somebody, or your partner will have an individual interview, and then you'll come together to have sort of like an interview with both of you. So, you know, you're looking at things like talking about your childhood, talking about how you were parented, talking about challenges that you faced growing up, you know, things like traditions and holidays, and all sorts of different things that makes up who you are and how you were parented, and you're each sort of asked those questions, and then you come together and you talk about your relationship with your partner, if you have one, or if you're married, like I said. You'll talk about how you met, how long you've been together, you know, what makes your relationship successful. If you have another child, or that you already have children, the social worker does a sort of conversation with your child about, like, you know, how do they feel about having a sibling, and, you know, what have you already done in terms of parenting. And then you really start to talk about your adoption plan with your social worker, you know, how you're talking about your truths about, are you nervous about, you know, open and closed adoption? And it's really to talk about if there's still hesitation about adoption, if this is still the right path for you. So it's really these in-depth conversations with you and a social worker about your life. And then obviously, yes, your home is observed and, you go through, is there a space for a baby? What does that look like? And talking about things like that. So we always say to really, really be yourself and speak your truth. Don't say what we think we want to hear. You are, the most important thing is that you are who you are, and you are honest, and you are there to really try to make that connection, and let us help you, create these tools. So I think, did you say there was another slide for home study, or is that the only one? Did I make that up?
No, it's just this one.
Okay.
I was going to invite Trey, actually, not to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to talk a little bit about how the home study does or does not differ within the realm of foster care specifically.
Yeah, I would let Trey talk about that, because I don't know anything about foster care. We don't work with foster care, so go for it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's pretty much mirrors. The home studies are pretty general, the same: international adoption, foster care, or domestic adoption. I think the one difference, I think, in foster care potentially maybe is more of a focus on special needs, right? Kids are coming into the system because of trauma, so there's maybe different things you may see, drug exposure, and just, some of those things. And so, like, just ability to kind of work with, do the special needs of the kid. So maybe more training and resources there. And that's probably really the main difference. And then maybe obviously if you can get licensed for multiple kids, so you may have to have more than just a crib, so multiple kids in the home, and just assessing what that looks like, but generally pretty much the same.
Great. So for those just joining us, just quickly again, I'm David Dodge. I'm the executive editor of Gays with Kids. We're in the middle of our webinar about the overview of the adoption process. I want to invite everyone again, if you have questions about anything that anyone has covered so far, please use the Q&A function to ask questions about anything that is or is not covered that's related to adoption. We will be going through as many of those as we can get through towards the end of the presentation. And again, thank you for being here. Our last slide here is the phases of the adoption journey. I'm going to hand this back to Molly.
All right. So we sort of have broke this down into 3 phases of the adoption journey. The first stage is matching. And in domestic infant adoption, this is a very birth parent driven process. So that means that the birth mother chooses the family and stays in touch with them. In foster care, you'll work with a caseworker on your placements. And so that is more of a child focused and driven process. As far as preparing, then I actually asked them to do the second bullet there, which is, this is actually a time for us that we tell our families it's a great time to really grow your knowledge of adoption, open adoption, transracial adoption, but then also it's finding your peace in this journey. So just like getting yourself settled and preparing for the wait and preparing for meeting a birth mother. And then also making sure you and your partner are on the same page. So I always tell my families that while you wait, time is just such a special and good time to truly prepare. Also, this is a good time for you to find a pediatrician that you trust. It's always good. Ideally, you wouldn't be their first gay family or their first family adopting. So finding that a good, strong pediatrician, finding childcare, figuring out what you're going to do when the actual baby comes, making sure your support is ready and on point, the team of people who are going to be by your side. And then also the fun part, which is shopping for the baby, getting all of those essential things that you need. And then finalization actually happens, normally this happens 3 to 6 months post placement. So that's after the baby has been placed with you. And I think it's kind of the same for foster care too, although Trey can jump in about that usually there's this post placement period where a worker will be coming to visit your home. And so there's sort of placement and then post placement and then finalization. And that post placement period takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months again before you get to finalization, which is the end of your journey or the start of it.
Great, fantastic. So that brings us to our Q&A portion. So again, if you have any questions about anything that's been covered, anything relating to adoption at all, big or small, doesn't matter how individualized or personalized it is, our experts are here to answer it. Please use the Q&A function, and if you can also chat us privately if you'd prefer. But so the first question we have is around, no surprise, costs when it comes to all of this stuff. So why don't we actually start with domestic infant adoption and talk about the average cost and why it is what it is. Olivia, do you want to take that first?
Sure. Sorry, I was unmuting myself. So you're asking for a ballpark price for domestic infant adoption.
And what's entailed in that.
So, we always say it really is dependent upon a lot of factors, but if I have to ballpark it, I would say anywhere between 35 and 45,000. And so part of that will go, and like I said, every agency is going to be different, but I feel like most private adoption agencies are pretty similar, but part of that fee is going to go towards the agency fee, which will, be your social worker, your case manager, your profile building, your advertising, all the stuff that the agency does for you. And then kind of in the middle of your process, you'll take out an escrow, and that will go towards, once you're matched, you'll pay for all of both your, lawyer and the birth parents, lawyer, social worker, anything that goes into medical costs and needs. And so that is kind of like the second half of the fee. So it doesn't all usually, you're not paying that money all up front. And it just sort of varies, with each adoption. But I would put it around that price. And then sort of that's how a lot of agencies decide to break it up.
Awesome. And then Trey, do you want to kind of talk about this in the context of foster care?
Yeah, so kind of the process for foster care adoption really should be very low cost to you. Every state has a public child welfare system that you can be licensed and approved for foster care and adoption through foster care through their system. And so obviously child welfare is a publicly funded system, and so they fund you getting licensed and approved. Same cost around if you never parented before, obviously setting up the house, getting child, baby stuff, whatever the age of kids you would parent. Depending on the state, there are private agencies that you can use, and sometimes some of those, depending on the state, may charge a small agency fee to get approved. In our state, it's around $800 to $1,500. And then, but that would be the only cost. I guess the only cost you would have too is when you finalize a foster care adoption. You pay for that lawyer, but most states reimburse that cost to their adoption support program. So in the end, you'd break even.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything you'd add, Molly, about costs just generally?
No, I think the stat is nationwide. The average for infant adoption is 42,000. Just so you know, and I'm pretty sure international adoption is around that amount too. Although it could be a little higher.
Right. Again, I think it varies depending on the country quite a bit. But so while we're on the topic, actually, why don't we just go into some of the ways that people can afford adoption or offset the cost? If Olivia, do you want to just talk through some of the resources that are available to adoptive families?
Yeah, so I know that one of the things you can do is talk to your employer, and they can often offer like an adoption stipend. And then, of course, I'm going to misquote this website, help2adopt.org, I have to look it up, I'm so sorry, on the spot. But basically, I will find it for you. And it gives you that list of resources where there's potential scholarships, there's potential grants you can apply for through this website. And that's a pretty good list is what I would say. So, but for the most part, you can also probably talk to, whoever, a lot of agencies have like an initial workshop you'll attend, and they will give you those resources at the workshop to be able to, go through these things so that you can definitely have sort of fully informed before you make the decision to dive into that. But let me grab that website for you real quick.
It's helpusadopt.org. Hey everyone, I'm Brian Rosenberg. I'm the founder of Gays with Kids. And I can tell you, I know Becky Fawcett, who launched helpusadopt.org after going through the adoption process herself with her husband. She would love to get many, many more members from the LGBTQ community applying for grants. She said she doesn't get nearly enough, given how many dads we know there are. So we're always trying to get more people to know about helpusadopt.org. They have a rolling admissions. I think it's twice a year that they give grants. And they're wonderful, and she's wonderful, and would love to get would love to help many more gay, bi, and trans men become dads. So please, if you're looking to adopt and you need any financial support, contact Help Us Adopt.
Thank you for knowing that website and for being really informed about it.
No worries.
I'll also just mention that we're going to be doing an entire webinar series just on affording the different paths to fatherhood, and we'll have one that's completely dedicated to adoption. Becky Fawcett from Help Us Adopt will very likely be a part of that, and so you can end up asking her some questions directly. Molly, do you have anything to add about how
that there are tax credits available, federal tax credits, and most states have credits as well. So we always tell families to make sure you're using an accountant who understands those credits on the year that you finalize. So those credits couldn't be given to you until after they start the year that you finalize your adoption. So that also, just like we tell, a lot of our families host their own fundraisers, or we'll sell things online. So I think there's a lot. We have a whole list of things that our families have done, and most agencies, as Olivia said, have that too. So I think that joining that webinar will be really special and important to do, but also it's a great question to ask your specific agency.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. So the next we have here in our Q&A is there a difference between single parent adoption and partner adoption? So I guess adopting as a single person versus adopting as a couple. Molly, since we were with you last, you want to take that?
No difference at all. Not
Easy.
for us.
Anything you would say, Olivia or Trey, about just the difference between doing it as a single parent versus not?
No, we have many single parents on our website right now active, and we've adopted to many single parents. So just like to echo Molly, totally the same process. I think single parenthood is lifted up now, which is great. So, no difference.
Great.
Yeah.
Same
About a third of our foster parents are single. I guess the only thing we do at our agency, there's process is the same, but we do ask our single applicants more about their support system because there's not that second parent in the home to help just to be built in. So we do focus on that a little bit more, but otherwise, yep, exact same process.
So I'll give a little bit of a shout out to our Facebook group that's dedicated to single gay dads. It's very active. It's our most active group. And there's a lot of great people asking resources and just, using leaning against each other and using each other as support. We also have a whole section of our website that's dedicated just to stories about single gay dads. So please check those out too for inspiration. It is becoming far more common to become a dad as a single queer person or just as a single person generally. But I will say this is again one of the reasons why it's incredibly important to find agencies like the three that you see here that are affirming of LGBTQ people, because the same religious freedom bills, so-called religious freedom bills that make it legal to discriminate against people for being queer, make it legal to do so for being single, and basically for anything that someone might object to on the basis of religion. So it is not a different process as long as you're working with the sort of people that you see here on the panel today. So let us know if that answered your question, and if there's more detail to it, feel free to re-ask it. And again, I'll just say this email a couple of times, but any questions that you have that we're not able to get to, or that you just want to ask a little bit more privately, you can email to dads@gayswithkids.com. We'll get it to the right place to get the question answered. Okay, so this next one is about lawyer services. So Olivia and Molly, do you want to talk about the lawyer services that you provide, and if they are in-house, or if this is something people have to contract out? Just starting with you, Olivia.
So in-house meaning that they find a lawyer versus we find lawyers?
I assume that in-house means that you provide the lawyer versus they having to find one.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the benefits of working with an agency, which I'm sure Molly will echo also, is that basically, we do everything for you. So we're finding your lawyers, we're giving you a social worker, we're giving you your, doing all your outreach. So basically, yes, we will provide you a lawyer. And what's great is that everyone has their own separate lawyer. So, the agency has a lawyer, the birth family will have a lawyer, and the adoptive parents will have a lawyer. So that your interest is at the heart of the lawyer, and you don't have to worry about cross interest. So yes, we absolutely will provide you with a lawyer that's included in the agency.
Awesome. I assume it's the same at Choice Molly, but also we went over this briefly in the presentation, but if you just want to break down a little bit of the difference between independent adoption, working with a lawyer privately, and agency adoption.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe the difference between the two is the agency is going to be the one to help you find a birth mother, connect with that birth mother, sort of be that support for the person that you get matched with. When you do independent adoption, normally that's when you believe you can find a pregnant person on your own to match with. So So the agency is there, again, sort of to find that person for you. If you use just an independent attorney, it's sort of that independently finding on your own. I will tell you, our lawyer services are a little bit different. They are kind of technically in-house in that we do come up with your full legal plan. We help to connect you with attorneys. These are well-vetted attorneys that meet our mission and our values, but they are additional to our fees. And I think what Olivia's agency does, Friends in Adoption, is awesome. I think most agencies have that outside of their fees, but it will be quoted to you, and that will be part of that $35,000 to $45,000 estimate that we already gave you guys.
Oh, great, good to know. And Trey, if you just want to talk about how the legal stuff works within the foster care system and how it may or may not be different from an adoption agency.
Yeah, so like we talked about, the matching part all happens on the state side, right? It's about the best interest of the kid and what skills you bring to parent that kid. And so, and then all like the termination of legal rights and all that stuff is handled by the state to get the kid legally free for adoption. So foster parents or foster adopt parents don't need that lawyer until the very end of the process where you're about to finalize. And then you would seek that out. Amara has a list of, recommended lawyers that, Molly said, we vetted, we know they're, LGBTQ company, all those type of things. And then you would contact that lawyer and then they retain them and they would work with the state and Amara to get all the documents and they'd file that. And then, that would be that.
Great, thank you all. So this next one is also for you, Trey. It's about the foster care system. So the question is, I think, basically asking whether it's possible to specifically only foster children that might be available for permanent placement, like a legalized adoption versus temporary, and if they have more chances to adopt in the long run, and depending on how they go about that, you can take that.
Yeah. So generally, you're going to get what they call a unified home study. So you're going to be approved for foster care and adoption ahead of time when you become a foster parent. In terms of, yes, you can go into the process saying, I want legally free kids whose case plan is going to be adoption from the the moment they're placed into the home. I'm going to talk about trends, about ages of what we see. It's obviously the trends I know are my state, but I think they're pretty similar across the nation. For younger kids, infants and toddlers, we don't see a lot of legally free infants and toddlers because it's going to be their first time into foster care. And so the state needs to give their parents time for that case to work out to see if they can return home or not. But given that, I adopted my son when I was 4, but we had him since he was 15 months. So for those little ones, you really have to be that kid's placement and really ride out the case and support that reunification and to see what happens or not. In my state, the kids that are legally free that need the placement now are going to be 6, 7, typically or older, maybe a large sibling set, higher special needs related to maybe some drug exposure, alcohol exposure, autism, things like that. So they're going to be, a little bit more challenging of a kid to parent. And so if you have that skill set or you think you can gain that skill set, you definitely can go in looking to adopt from the beginning.
Great, awesome. And so the second part of that question was, how does a foster care agency pick if there's multiple foster families that are interested in a foster adopt process with the same child?
So typically how it works is the child welfare system has some way of sending out referrals of kids that need placement, that day, that week. It's a big email list. It goes out to every foster parent, every private agency that works with foster parents, and then your home study essentially gets submitted to that kid. So you get that email and say, hey, that 3-year-old seems like a good fit. I'm going to reach out to the placement worker or tell my agency, please submit my home study for that child. The public welfare social worker for that child and the family will collect the home studies and then, read whatever, pick their top 3. Sometimes they do an interview panel. Sometimes they're in a rush. And obviously they just pick the first family that, maybe lives close to the family and can meet the needs. It just kind of depends. But the decision's typically always made at the state side around you just kind of present yourself as a foster parent for a placement option. If it's a legally free kid that does need adoption, there's, I think, more input from the parent because we know you're going to be adopting from day one about what you're looking for. If it's an older kid, a teenager, if they're 14 and over, they have to consent to their adoption. So they're going to be very involved in the whole process, saying what they want in a family, interviewing you, kind of testing you out as well, because they also have to consent. They're a legal party to their own case.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a great question, and it's going to be different depending on where you are in the country. So I'll have all 3 of you answer this. So the question is how the adoption and foster care process has changed due to the pandemic with respect to how home studies are conducted, finalizations, court hearings, all of that good stuff. And so let's just start with you, Olivia, and we'll have all three give a perspective from where they are in the country.
Yeah, so I think agency-wise, it really hasn't changed much because although we are home-based in both Vermont and New York, we do so much remote work that it really feels like when everyone went remote, we were just doing that anyways. So in terms of being able to connect with people and, provide services, I feel like it has been pretty consistent. I think, when it comes to adoptive families, just the things have changed is that it has all gone online. We're still able to do home studies, luckily, just digitally. So you will meet your home study social worker over Zoom, which really, is hard because it takes the in-person out of it. But I would say, regardless of whether we're in a pandemic or the world is ending or it's great, people continue to give birth and have children and have children who have needs. So, in that sense, I really feel like it hasn't, it hasn't necessarily affected, let's say, the numbers that you're seeing in terms of adoption, in the current moment.
Yep. Molly, you want to talk about it from your context?
Yeah, no, I actually agree. I think we're just doing more online than we ever did before, but, and that includes like post-placement visits are happening online, court hearings are happening online. So it's actually been kind of nice. I mean, the sad part, like Olivia said, is we don't get to meet families in person, and I do miss that. But yeah, we haven't really seen any change. Things are going on as normal.
Great. And then Trey, from the Seattle perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was initial shock for us because we were very much an in-person agency. It's just around how do we move everything online, home study interviews, the home inspection. That's been an interesting one. How do you do that over FaceTime and putting the camera in through the house? But we've figured it out. And so, yeah, we've kind of, I think we may have had some initial delays as we kind of pivoted, but now we're doing well. I think one thing with foster care is we're kind of mandated by federal guidelines around licensing, and they do require some in-person visits as part of the home study. And so we've had to get waivers. And so that's all been worked out. The feds have been really working with the states to help with that. And so, yeah, just a lot more online stuff, but otherwise things are moving along.
That's great. And so do you know, I mean, I know within the foster care, I mean, because it is such a county by county different, I mean, it can change drastically even within the same state. Is that not right? So like, I think here in New York, for instance, they're still not doing finalizations because it needs to be done in person in court. Whereas in many other states around the country, they are still proceeding with like a Zoom finalization or Zoom hearings, et cetera. Do you know much about kind of the differences across the country? Beyond that, okay. Well, so anyway, if you have a specific question about how this is impacting the foster or adoption process in your state or your county, feel free to, again, email us at dads@gayswithkids.com, and we can try to follow up with you and get you some specific information about how it's been impacted where you are. Okay, great. Okay, so this next one is also about the COVID. I think we answered that. AJ let us know if we did not. We can circle back. So another one is interested in foster adopt. Is it possible to adopt children without the risk of having to give them back? So I think we more or less answered this too. Trey, anything you would add from that formulation though? And I guess specifically if there's a difference with older children.
Yeah, I think if you're just, I think research the trends of who's legally free of the kids in your state. Like I said, it varies depending on various states, just how they kind of work their system. But it's generally going to trend older, higher needs, more complex needs. So I would definitely research that. But yes, it's definitely possible. Those kids are often the ones lingering in foster care the most and need an adoptive home the most. And I would quickly say reunification sounds scary when you're far back, but it's actually a really beautiful thing when you can do it in a really beautiful way and bond with the birth parent. So I would say, don't let that be a deterrent now. Keep learning more foster care adoptions, piquing your interest and learn more about it because it's emotional, but it's also really beautiful as well. So you're on mute, David.
Thank you. Okay, great. So this next one is, let's see, is about kind of discrimination in any of these processes and how you handle it if you, do you see many examples of the LGBT community being discriminated in the states that you work in or in the processes that you work in? Olivia, if you want to, we can start with you.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of a broad question in terms of just, I mean, agency wise, obviously, absolutely not, because we're HRC certified, and anybody that we work with, from counselors to social workers to lawyers, are also going to be, with our same values, and the people that we send people to, we have a lot of connections with Planned Parenthood and Abortion Care Network, so whoever we work with is going to also hold our values. So we'll never send you to someone that we don't think is going to, also be empowering and affirming. I would like to think that New York is pretty on the forefront of things and pretty liberal, and Vermont as well. So, I also feel like when it comes to birth parents and choosing, like 75% of our families are LGBTQ, and birth parents usually don't seem to have a problem with that. And I would say, one person doesn't get chosen over the other. It's all very equal. This is in a nutshell, because there's, of course, discrimination. We have a long way to go just in the United States. But I would say for New York, it's not like you face that, in front of lawyer or in front of the court. You're not going to be denied these things, right? We're over that in that sense. But I really feel positive on the front of acceptance and affirming. So I don't have much to say about, being hindered because of someone's identity or sexuality in terms of our work and what we're doing. I don't know if anyone has a different experience.
When I think the question was specific to working with birth parents and first families. So
Sorry. Birth parents.
Which you answered.
Yeah, no, my answer is no, is that actually I think that a lot of people are really, really open to like all, formations of family, from single parents to gay families to, I really feel like I just haven't experienced, from looking at cases, birth parents, denying that. And also, the birth parents are sort of they look through the profiles, you know what I mean? So they will be, if they want to choose, so they're going to be informed of that. And it's not like you're going to have to be subjected to conversations where you're going to be with a birth parent that's going to discriminate against you, if that makes sense. We're not going to put you in those situations. So, yeah.
Anything you'd add, Molly, from your experience?
I would just going back to the one slide that we talked about, only 1 in 4 adoption agencies are inclusive of all families. So I think when we are talking about, I'm from Ohio, so I don't get to have the same experience of Olivia or Trey, I think. But where the adoption community is far behind, birth families are not. And I think that, they're the next generation, so they're badasses in their own right. And they're choosing families the same way that we would. And they, also, I think that there's something about gay dads that we see with birth families that we talk to. There's this idea of sometimes families, adoption is their plan B, but many times for gay dads, adoption is their plan A. And so they can show up to the match in this really beautiful way. They can be there for the person who chooses them in a way that other families cannot. And so I think it kind of like gives you a leg up. So I agree with Olivia. Absolutely. Our birth families actually many times are very interested in especially our gay families and our single dads.
That's amazing. Trey, how about for you?
Yeah, I guess the slight difference with foster care adoption is like we still encourage open adoptions, but the birth parents didn't choose you; the state chose you as the adopted parent. And so I would say in my 9 years, I can think of 2 cases where the birth parents had some pretty homophobic views, and it created some tension around the adoption and kind of ongoing open adoption. But that's 2 out of 9 years, and so most birth parents, if they're wanting open adoption and really want those relationships, the sexual orientation of the parents hasn't generally been an issue. I think the one thing about foster care is you're dealing with the state system, and depending on what state you live in, you could have some more discrimination from that side of it. But yeah.
And so I guess what would your recommendation be if any parent did feel like they were being discriminated against by a state social worker, or if they experienced that in some way, what would be the kind of where would you direct them?
Yeah, I mean, I think one way is working with a private agency that does foster care work, because you're going to pick them, you know, they're LGBTQ competent. And so like we will advocate for our families if we perceive discrimination on the state side. And so having that person with you, but if you're licensed directly with the state, most states have like an ombudsman's, like a formal complaint kind of process. And I think, yeah, really looking into that. And we're also finding a community of other, I think, gay and LGBTQ parents to kind of help advocate and kind of support each other in the masses, if that makes sense, against systems. Yeah.
Great. Yep. Okay, so this next question is about, I guess, trying to make yourself, Olivia, you were mentioning the profile that adoptive families will create that are used to help birth parents choose them. So is there anything you would, what do you recommend people do to try to make themselves the most attractive, or, you know, what are birth families really looking for when they're going through these portfolios?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sorry.
The number one thing is be yourself. I know that sounds like a kindergarten mantra, but it is the truth that you really, it's really important that you are true to yourself and you, portray yourself the way, that you are, because the truth is that you will be chosen. It's, at Friends in Adoption, we always say it's about when and not if. But your profile usually includes a pretty extensive sort of first glance. So it talks about you, your community, if you have a partner, your home life, things like that. And, sometimes it's funny what, birth parents resonate with, sometimes it's where you live, sometimes that it's that you have a dog, you know what I mean? Sometimes that it's that you play the guitar, or, that your husband is a writer. It really, there's no magical formula that's going to, attract someone. A lot of times if people have been waiting a little bit longer than usual, they'll ask, is there something wrong with my profile? But the truth is that there's not, and that, we really encourage you to be authentic and be yourself.
What would you add, Molly, if anything?
Yeah, we say raw and real is really, and we tell families when they're creating their profiles to think of Instagram, Facebook, YouTube type content, because that's really what our birth families are attracted to. So I think I really just agree with Olivia. Yeah, I think that's all. Just be yourself. Be ready to be vulnerable.
So obviously it's different in the foster care context, but anything you would add, Trey, about how to make yourselves the most attractive to the state, I guess, as they're trying to figure out the placements?
Typically that's so the home study is typically what is the most thing that's going to be used as kind of your profile, the equivalent. And best practices is that you should be able to review your home study before it's officially approved. And so, making edits, we always can't make your edits, but definitely if so making sure that's presenting your experience and your skills the way you want it to. And the other is we do have interview panels. If it's a legally free kid, they want adoption, they may pick the top 3 foster families and bring them in. Same exact suggestions is just be yourself, answer the questions normally. It's just being yourself is what gets you through, although I know it's hard for people to kind of together, but just be yourself and it'll work out eventually.
Okay, so this next one I got privately. So it's someone that has a friend that had gone through a private domestic adoption or was attempting to, and had been matched with 2 different birth families that had then, following the birth parent changed their mind. So I guess they're just saying, how often does that happen, and what kind of resources do agencies provide adoptive families as they're going through that process? So why don't we start with you, Olivia, and then we'll have Molly take it next.
Yeah, well, fall throughs are a reality of adoption, and we make sure that families know that before they begin their adoption journey. That's something you talk about with your social worker, how you're going to handle that, stuff like that. I would really say, that it just varies by year, how frequently it happens. I would say, it's not, I think people always think for some reason it's the majority of the adoptions, but that just isn't true. We maybe have a couple a year. And just so the ratio, we do about 30 adoptions per year. So maybe, 2 to 3, it just depends. And typically what happens is a fall through happens, and then both your case manager and the agency is there to support you as an adoptive family. You have the option to go on pause, to kind of take time, and we offer you counseling resources, because, you know, it is really the loss of a child in a way. And so we really try to help you work through that. And you can stay on pause as long as you need. But unfortunately, that is just sort of the reality of going through adoption.
Great. What would you add, Molly?
I think the national average is 50%, but of pregnant people have a change of heart. But that's not really what our numbers looks like. Ours are pretty much like Olivia too. But I think I would just say that just because that was your friend's journey, it doesn't mean it's going to be yours. Like, we're dealing with humans, and they're allowed to have a change of heart. And I think that you'll grow in that knowledge and understanding. What you really want is a birth parent who has chosen you with peace in their heart. And so that's honestly is the goal. And so we just try to teach families that a change in heart isn't a bad thing. It just means that we're going to get to that person who really is the right fit for you. Peace in her heart is peace in your child's heart. So that's what matters the most.
Awesome.
Listen, that's lovely, Molly. That was a really nice thing.
Okay, so this next question is a great one. So it is as to whether you're aware of any active virtual support communities for LGBT intended parents, new parents, etc. I was, about to be like, find us on Facebook, but then the follow up to that is that they prefer not to participate on that platform, which I understand. So Gays with Kids is active on other platforms. I'm not sure if your prohibitions against all social media or just Facebook, but we have a very vibrant community on Instagram. We're growing Twitter, on YouTube, etc. And as we're about to relaunch our site, we will have other places for you to meet and socialize with other people that are going through this process. We also have another series of webinars that are going to be more topical. So it'll be gatherings of queer men who are either dads or are wanting to become dads, just as a place to talk about concerns, issues, things going on in the world. We had one a couple months ago that was specific to single dads, for instance. So I'd say look out for that at Gays with Kids as your first resources. We're going to be rolling that kind of stuff out. But then I'll also hand it over to these three. Do you know of any recommendations you'd have or places to direct people that are virtual but not on Facebook necessarily? I'll let anyone jump in.
I was going to say, I know one of my biggest recommendations, just because I do outreach all the time, is that, I don't know where, I think it's an AJ asked that question. I don't know where AJ lives, but I would recommend finding like your local or the nearest city's Pride Center and giving them a call and asking them. Usually there's tons of like virtual support groups. I know they have a lot of parenting groups. And you don't even necessarily have to like live right where the Pride Center is, but they can at least be a better connector for you and a family group. I would also look at PFLAG. They have a lot of resources as well, which is, so I think, just sort of reaching out to Pride-focused agencies and asking about their support groups. So I don't have, besides PFLAG, I don't have a specific like website, but I do think that reaching out to your local Pride Center and asking about virtual groups.
Great. Anything you'd add, Molly or Trey?
No, I was going to say, get you a Facebook account now. Gays with Kids is like my family's place to go. I love Olivia's suggestions. And the only thing I would maybe add is to talk with your agency, the agency that you choose, because we do have our own support group that's online. I hold a While You Wait support group for our waiting families. So just, ask your agency what support they have. But I think Olivia gave great suggestions too.
Great. Trey, how about you?
Yeah, does Family Equality Council have online support groups right now? I don't know if they do, but that's somewhere to check. And then, yeah, I would say just look, like we have an LGBTQ focused support group that we can do statewide now because of COVID, because it's virtual. So yeah, looking at your local agencies that are LGBTQ affirming and maybe seeing if they have any groups or things you can join.
Awesome. And so I would also say, AJ, that we are all ears if you have ideas of ways that you want to start bringing people together on different platforms. It's very much what we're trying to do. We are also obviously very active on social media as our main way of reaching people, but we are trying to find ways to bring people together offline, ideally, when we're able to do so. Again, we're looking at in-person events that we would love to do. And, if there's other kinds of ways that we could be doing this kind of stuff virtually, other types of webinars like this, we would very much like to talk to you about those. So we do have someone that's chatting us saying that Family Equality Council, they do great work. They do a lot of community-based events too. I know they do a lot of in-person stuff, and I bet that they are also doing a lot of virtual stuff right now too. So I would definitely check them out. as well.
They just had it's passed, but they just had their virtual family week because usually they have it in person, but they couldn't.
Right.
So they probably just had a ton of resources come together. So Don in the chat is totally right that family equality is a really great place to reach out to.
Yeah, so for when things are back to normal, or if, when we can be socializing again, Family Equality Council has been organizing a week in P-Town in Massachusetts on the Cape for years and years. I would think they've been doing it for 15, 20 years at this point. It's a great gathering of LGBTQ parents, and even if you're not a parent yet, I think it'd be a great place to meet people, ask questions, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so we actually managed to get through all of our questions with 5 minutes to spare. That's a record. So I will just say briefly before we sign off, so we have 5 minutes still, so if people have other questions that they want to sneak in here, feel free to do so. But I also just want to say, this is like a Herculean task to try to get through the entire adoption process in an hour. I'm sure we just scraped the surface of so many of your questions. But again, we're going to be doing these webinars on an ongoing basis. Actually, I think we even have a slide with our next couple coming up. So again, we're doing these webinars not just on adoption, but also on foster care. Specifically, we're going to be doing them on surrogacy, on co-parenting arrangements, all the different paths that are really available to queer men to become dads. So if you're still feeling overwhelmed by the process, I do not blame you. That's why we're here. And we really do want to be the place that's going to kind of help you guide you through these very, very complicated processes. So I'll just pause a second for any last minute questions. I think we're good. And then I'll just give each of you then with the minutes that we have remaining to sign off and to maybe let people know where they can reach you. Starting with you, Olivia.
Sorry, I have to mute myself. And then for some reason, I'm so sorry, you broke up. You said a last minute, what did you ask me to say?
I'm just saying, as we're closing out, just as some closing thoughts, and then if you just want to let people know where they can reach you.
Yeah, for sure. So, closing thoughts is that, yes, it's an overwhelming experience to think about all this. And so I hope that the hour really at least help you, sort of start that thinking process. If you haven't yet, I would suggest, I think obviously all of these agencies probably have websites. So for us, it's friendsinadoption.org and so, or .com. And so should we put that in the chat if you want the websites? I don't know if that's helpful.
Sure.
Second, I will do that. I was right the first time. I get really nervous when I talk. I'm so sorry. So that's for me. And, basically, if you go to our website, it is going to give you, a really great us in a nutshell, where to go to next, events that are coming up, stuff like that. So I think a website's a great, first sort of look at the agency. And so that's what I would recommend going to next and seeing if we speak to you and sort of taking the next step, which would be a phone call or an interest email from there. So, and I wish everybody luck because this is it is overwhelming, but it's so exciting. And, if you choose to adopt, I just wish you the best.
Thank you so much. Okay, Molly.
And yes, I put in my website as well. My email is molly@choicenetworkadoptions.com, MOLLY. And yeah, I think that it's really awesome that you took the time to jump on these webinars. Gays with Kids is putting a lot of time and talent into these webinars. So I would just say keep jumping on them, find you a community of support. And like Olivia, I wish you well in this process.
And Trey.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think, it's always so encouraging to, there's so many gay men out there potentially interested in parenting, and do your research, take your time. I always tell people I live and breathe social work and foster care adoption, and it took me and my husband 3 years to even submit our application from the time we said, yes, we want to become parents, and I do this every day. So take your time. It's a journey, and do all your research so that you feel fully comfortable in whatever path you choose. I'm not sure how many of you guys live in the Seattle area. I'm very limited area, but you can find my contact on the Amara page through Gays with Kids or our website. You can definitely, even if you don't live here, I have a passion for gay men parenting, and so I would chat with you and help you, point you in the right direction in your state or locality. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So Friends in Adoption and Choice both work nationally. So again, you feel free to reach out to them no matter where you are in the country. Amara is, the foster care system is a very local one. So if you are interested in foster care but are not in Seattle, again, please reach out to us and we can try to connect you to an LGBT affirming agency in your area. So lastly, I'll just say again, I'm David Dodge. I'm the executive editor of Gays with Kids. We're very excited to be rolling out these webinars. It's still, a process as we roll them out. So any feedback or anything people want to send to me directly, I would love to hear it. My email you can get me again is at dads@gayswithkids.com. And we will be, again, our next webinar is about surrogacy and how to afford it. And then we have another one around adoption that's going to be on the same topic. So look out for those. And I can't thank our panelists enough. So there's one last, so we are recording this presentation for Lamar, who just asked that. We will be emailing it out to everyone that's on the call. We'll also be splicing this up into helpful little sound bites about the Q&A, so you can get a little review of what we presented here that way as well. And that is it. Thank you all so much again, and we hope to see you at a future webinar.